Hello, biology class. I just wanted to do at least one more video working through one of the evolution lab trees. A variety of students have already turned in the Nova Evolution Lab with great progress. Good job. I still encourage you to follow along with this video so you can hear some of my explanations on what's going on with one of the more important trees in Mission 4. And if you haven't completed all 5 missions yet, then this is hopefully some assistance to you if you're stuck somewhere in Mission 4. So I'm going to be looking at Mission 4, Biogeography, Where Life Lives. I'm going to replay this, and I've completed these here, but we're going to do this Kangas, gliders, and snakes, oh my. Species evolve to conquer environmental challenges. That means that if two species are faced with the same environmental obstacle, they may develop similar features to adapt. In this evolutionary tree, we see several traits and several organisms. Let's look at our traits. We have vertebrae, gives birth to live young, pouch, prolonged development in womb, uses echolocation, and warm-blooded. These are mammal traits, but some of the traits are only for some mammals, right? Pouches and prolonged development in womb don't apply to every mammal out there. Our mammals are elephants, flying squirrels, kangaroos, platypus, rat snake, and sugar glider. Well, the rat snake is not a mammal, so it'll be interesting to see where it fits into this phylogenetic tree. Let's take a look at our organisms a little bit more closely with the magnifying glass. Here's an elephant. It has a prolonged development in womb. It gives birth to live young. It is warm-blooded, and it is a vertebrate. Let's look at the flying squirrel. That's a nice photo. It has prolonged development in womb, gives birth to live young, is warm-blooded, and is a vertebrate. They can't actually fly, but they use this skin, this webbing between their arms to glide from tree branch to tree branch. These tiny rodents are found in Europe, North America, and parts of Asia. That's an important bit of information there. Here's a kangaroo. Now, it has a pouch. That's different than prolonged development in womb. It gives birth to live young, it's warm-blooded, and it is a vertebrate. It says that a baby kangaroo called a joey is about the size of a bean when it's born. It then crawls into its mother's pouch where it finishes developing. We watched a video about this last week on different types of mammals and how they give birth. These are marsupials. They have a pouch. There's a platypus. This is a funny looking guy. It is warm-blooded and it is a vertebrate, but it does not have any of the other traits that we looked at in our list previously. It's a mammal, which means it's hairy and produces milk to feed its young, but it lays eggs, so it does not have a pouch or prolonged development in womb or anything like that. Here's a yellow rat snake. It's a reptile. It is a vertebrate. It is not warm-blooded. It is what's called ectothermic, which means that they rely on their environment for heat. And lastly, here's a sugar glider. That looks kind of familiar. It has a pouch, though. It gives birth to live young, it is warm-blooded, and it is a vertebrate. Like the flying squirrel, the sugar glider has a furry webbing that allows it to glide from tree to tree. It is found in Australia and Tasmania. This nocturnal creature is named after its love of all things sweet, like nectar and tree sap. If I compare the sugar glider to the flying squirrel, I see organisms that are very similar. And if I look in my traits list up here, in the flying squirrel, I see prolonged development in womb, and in the sugar glider, I see has a pouch. They share the other traits, not that one. Let's look at a species comparison. Here's our marsupial examples, and here's our placental mammal examples. Sugar gliders and flying squirrels may look like twins, but because one's a marsupial and one's a placental mammal, they aren't closely related at all. When two unrelated organisms come to have similar traits like this, it's called convergent evolution. We took notes on this not too long ago. Here we see that the sugar glider, a marsupial, and the flying squirrel, a placental mammal, look very similar, adapted to very similar situations. These other pictures don't look as similar, though in Australia a kangaroo might fill a similar ecological niche as deer, in North America. And I don't know about a koala filling the same ecological niche as an elephant, necessarily. But they're both mammals in their environments, adapted to their environments. I wouldn't necessarily say these two are examples of convergent evolution. I would say the kangaroo and the deer are similarly adapted to similar environments, but not obviously to the extent that the marsupial sugar glider and the placental flying squirrel are. So when we build our phylogenetic tree, we have to think about these relationships. So the rat snake, as a reptile, not a mammal, is not going to have these mammal-related traits, but these things are all vertebrates, so it is going to be a vertebrate on here. Now everybody else has got to be like over here somewhere somehow, on this like side of mammals. Okay, I got to get the rat snake back there. So the rat snake is all by himself as a reptile, and his one trait is the vertebrate trait, because these are all vertebrates. They all have a backbone. Now, we read that the rat snake is not warm-blooded, but all these other mammals are. So I'll take the warm-blooded trait. Whether you're a platypus, a kangaroo, an elephant, or a flying squirrel, or a sugar glider, you are warm-blooded. Now, we know that the platypus lays eggs. So it has to be on its own branch that doesn't have these other, like, young womb development type things. And we know that the sugar glider and a kangaroo both have a pouch, whereas the elephant and the flying squirrel give birth to live young. Now, giving birth to live young is a trait that all these share: the sugar glider, the kangaroo, the elephant, and the flying squirrel. Just that the sugar glider and the kangaroo, they give birth to very underdeveloped embryo type baby that then continues to develop in their pouch. That's fun. Whereas the flying squirrel and the elephant, as placental mammals, their young develop for much longer in the womb. Notice that we do not use the echolocation trait for this cladogram. Sometimes we don't use all the traits. This question says, despite living oceans apart, the North American kangaroo rat and the Australian hopping mouse look similar. Both are nocturnal and burrow underground. What can you infer? Notice that this question is not asking something directly about this cladogram. Instead, it's asking you to extend the concept that you've already observed. We've observed that the sugar glider and the flying squirrel, even though they look very similar, are actually on two separate branches of this phylogenetic tree. The flying squirrel is more closely related to the elephant because they're placental mammals. The kangaroo is more closely related to the sugar glider because they're marsupials. The sugar glider and flying squirrel are an example of convergent evolution because even though they don't share a recent common ancestor, they have similar traits to adapt to similar environmental conditions. This question has us look at another placental mammal marsupial combo example for convergent evolution. We have the kangaroo rat and the hopping mouse, which is going to be a marsupial. Okay, they're nocturnal and they burrow underground. So they're both doing the same thing in their environment. They both occupy the same sort of ecological niche, just in different geographic locations. So what can we infer? Well, we can infer that they have similar traits because they both live in deserts where burrowing and nocturnal behavior are beneficial. Kudos. Not all species with similar features date all the way back to Pangea, like some of the other activities you looked at earlier. Some have convergently evolved similar traits due to similar environmental conditions. Alright, it's good times. Convergent evolution is an interesting and important concept. It's the reason why animals on different sides of the planet, or plants on different sides of the planet, might look similar and have similar adaptations even though they are not directly related or descended from the same common ancestor. I've mentioned in class before that the big birds that fly in the sky that we call vultures, even though they are doing the same thing, eating dead animals that they find out in nature, as the vultures in Africa are doing. They're also finding dead animals they eat out in nature. But they're not directly related to each other. They evolve similar types of adaptations of soaring flight and strong senses of smell and the visual ability to see dead carcasses and a head that's featherless so it doesn't get gunky and dirty from dead animal blood and goo. Instead, it's like those traits evolved 2 different times for those 2 different organisms in their 2 different places to adapt to the conditions that are very similar in the ecological niche that is very similar for those 2 organisms. So I hope this was helpful completing mission 4. Again, please try to get this all done by Friday. Look out for a quiz either posted today or tomorrow that would be due later on in the week. That covers maybe a little bit of cladogram stuff, maybe a little bit of convergent evolution stuff. Those are important concepts I'd like to check your understanding on before the end of the week, so please look out for that. All right.